Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Meenakshi Basak, and I'll be facilitating this session. The topic of today's presentation is From Student Visa to Green Card, Understanding the Path. The agenda of this webinar series is to discuss strategies to leverage your U.S. educational experience for reaching your career and life goals. Primarily, the webinar will focus on education in the U.S., immigration categories relevant to international students, effective strategies to attain internship and work visa after studies. I'm delighted to welcome our esteemed speaker, Mr. Daniel Erickson from Louisiana Tech University. Dan, the Director of International Student Services at Louisiana Tech University, or LTU, has more than 30 years of experience in the international education industry. Dan has a master's degree from University of Minnesota and taught English to non-native speakers in China and the US. He has worked at Louisiana Tech for 26 years and is an expert in international student admissions and immigration procedures. Before turning the presentation over to Dan, I would like to quickly go through a few housekeeping items. We would love to take your questions, however, we cannot do so during the session. We will dedicate 15 minutes to a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to type in your questions at any time and we will answer those at the end of the session. Also, we will be recording this webinar. It will be available to the attendees after the session is over. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Erickson to begin the presentation. Dan?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be able to speak with you this evening. As our host has mentioned, I've been director here at Louisiana Tech for the last 26 years. And as you can imagine, I've seen many, many changes in the visa process, many changes in the different laws related to visas. So in today's webinar, we're going to look at those different visa categories and that path that a person would take in their studies through the different categories, but also introduce our school, Louisiana Tech University, and use that, the different situations at our school to kind of illustrate what we mean by this deeper understanding that students need to have as they go through these different steps. And I know we mostly have mostly an Indian audience tonight, and we know that Indian students are very interested and oftentimes very well versed in some of this visa information, but I think the interest is still there and hope that we can have this discussion together and learn something. I think that the next, we can say that introduce Louisiana Tech University a little bit. We're a Tier 1 national university. We're about 115 on the public universities, and so out of the 2,800 four-year colleges in the university, to be anywhere near the top 100 or so, top 200 is a good accomplishment. Beyond that, though, we're ranked. One group has this, the Business Insider has this ranked number 6 among all universities as most underrated universities. What does that mean? It means that we're a good university, a high value university, but sometimes people don't realize how good a university we are. Pay scale ranks us number 59 among all universities on salary potential. And again, students leaving our university have the highest average salaries of any university in our state. We are ranked 66 among all public universities as the best college value by Kiplinger's ranking service. And that again speaks to the idea of this high value, which means good quality and yet reasonable tuition, reasonable price, those two factors together. Also, with our research centers, we're ranked number 2 in the country for best innovative productivity, meaning our research centers looking at patents and other intellectual properties. The intellectual properties and patents that we our research centers and our research creates here is number 2 in the U.S. when you compare per dollar invested and what comes out of that research. So again, we're very proud of those statistics, and the one thing you see on your screen is that the World University Rankings have identified Louisiana Tech as one of the 20 universities in the world and one of just 9 universities in the U.S. that could challenge the elite universities and become globally renowned by the year 2030. And why is that? And what does that mean if students come here? What does that mean when it leads to things like internships, leads to work after graduation, leads to jobs? And there's just a kind of introduction to us, is because of kind of the majors and the path we've taken at our university. Again, we are a public university. We bachelor's, master's, PhDs. We have students here in North Louisiana from all over the world, from all over the United States. And we have 5 colleges here. We have Engineering and Science College, the Liberal Arts College, College of Education, College of Business, College of Applied and Natural Science. Nice weather. We're 3.5 hours from Dallas, which is important to the rest of this presentation too. The job markets that are near us and how those job markets impact the path our students take after they graduate. Here are some of the things that stand out in terms of departments or majors here. And you can see right away that there's some majors that are very special. Our engineering college is really a large college, and our university in general takes the approach of preparing people for cutting-edge kind of careers. And so you can see things like cyber engineering, nanotechnology, biomedical engineering, along with things like computer science and entrepreneurship. And those are things that stand out in our college as we go forward, because we're the first university about 10 years ago to have a bachelor's degree in nanosystems engineering. Again, trying to be a cutting-edge university. We had a research center in we've had a research center in nanotechnology, nano engineering for about 30 years now, 28 years. Just a few years ago, about 5 to 6 years ago, we were the first ones in the United States out of all universities to have a cyber engineering bachelor's degree. Cyber engineering, as you know, is really web engineering and deals to a large degree with cyber security. And there's expected to be a need for 4 to 5 million people to fill job openings in that field in the next 10 years, the next 8 years or so. And so we try to prepare our students for the future. You can see some of these other degrees. We have over 120 offerings here. But again, going forward, how to prepare people for successful careers, how to prepare people for successful relationships with companies, with internships, with to make them very attractive after graduation. That's something that we are we're very committed to. And so this kind of goes back here. We talk first about reaching your educational goals through getting experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's called curricular practical training. And this time talks about your time here at the university and how to take internships and how to use what's called curricular practical training. That's an immigration term to be able to work legally in an internship in the United States while you're on that H1B Visa. Then to also use your education and your experience to reach your career goals. And that involves what you do with what's called optional practical training. You're still on your student visa, but you were able to apply for a work card after graduation. and then work for a year with that card. The employer doesn't have to do any other paperwork during that time, but this optional practical training card is designed to give you experience after graduation, but it's also a bridge to other opportunities. One thing that we don't mention at this point is that if you're in what's called a STEM major, science, technology, engineering, or math major, then you can extend that card for even 2 more years. So 3 years you can work after graduation still on your student visa if you're from those STEM majors. And then moving ahead, using your education, your experience, and your career goals to reach your life goals. Perhaps, continuing to stay in the United States, and then bridging over to an H1B, specialty occupation visa, leaving the student visa and moving over to the H1B visa, and then continuing that process as you continue in what's called a non-immigrant track with the H1B visa. At the same time, starting the track based on your job and your job selection process and your advanced education, and moving ahead toward the immigration track, which would be called the green card, moving on toward permanent residency in the United States. So this kind of repeats some of those things. The F1 foreign student visa status is something that as you apply to universities, you get the immigration paperwork sent to you. So we would send that to you, and it would have information about your major, proving that you had the finances and all those kind of things, when you would be starting your degree program, and then timing, how long it would take you to do that degree program. You would use those immigration papers to apply for a visa at the embassy. You would also then also register online with the immigration service in the United States, pay a fee, and they would track the number on that I-20, and you use that I-20 to come in the country. That number would follow you even if you transferred to other universities. The number on that I-20 becomes your tracking number, and that's what you're paying for with that special fee, is their ability basically to track and update you, and we become your partners. We update your addresses, we update your education changes, we update your work opportunities, whether it's an internship, CPT, or after graduation, your OPT. So all of that would be updated in your records. We've mentioned H1B then, which is later in this process. And we just wanted to mention that there is that cap limit that I think people are familiar with. Right now, about 80,000 is the cap. But you do get an advantage, statistically, a slight advantage if you have a higher education degree, if you have a master's or PhD advanced degree, master's or PhD from a U.S. university. You get a statistical bump when they do the lottery. About 200,000 people apply, or more or less. A couple of years ago it was more. This past year it was a little bit less, and they apply for those 80,000 or so H1B visas. Now if you are working at a university, if you're working at even a university hospital or university research, then those jobs are cap exempt, meaning that there is no quota, there is no lottery for those jobs, and your relationship continues academically, then you don't have to wait in line for those that lottery. And again, we've already discussed a little bit about the green card and permanent residency. We have, this is just to give you an idea, we have many of our students, are still in touch with us legally after graduation, because they continue to work on their student visa. They continue to be connected to us even 1 year or 2 years after graduation, or even 3 years after graduation. because of these OPT work cards and because of even the STEM extension, the 2-year STEM extension OPT cards that happen after the original OPT. STEM, to repeat ourselves, stands for science, technology, engineering, or math. So if you have a business major, you would only get 1 year of OPT, but if you have a math major or a science major, technology major, then you can qualify for an additional 2 years. One of the things that I think people realize is that it's been very hard to increase the number of H1Bs for whatever political reason in our country. It's been hard to increase that number in the quota. However, the system seems to have gotten around some of that by having these 2 extra years of extension. So industry can, you can work with a company for up to 3 years and still be on that student visa. And you will have perhaps 3 chances at the lottery to change from your student visa to the H1B visa. So a little bit of what we're going to talk about talks about just the strategy that people can take as they try to move from this student visa to this H1 visa using OPT, optional practical training, and especially this extra 2 years of the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math OPT. Our students have left here and been hired by all the major oil companies. We're in a part of the United States that has a lot of oil, and traditionally for many, many years, oil engineers have come from our university. We have a great track record with these companies, and so our students work at all these companies. We're also, our students have been hired by all the major computer companies, all the major accounting firms, and many engineering companies. And we have a very strong aviation program here, very impressive. And we have pilots all over the world in many different airlines. One thing to note, I think one of the first set of pilots that flew that large Airbus that Air India purchased several years back with 800 people. One of the first pilots was a Louisiana Tech graduate, and he was an Indian citizen that had years of experience flying, I think even for the UN. So we have pilots all over the world. Backing up, these engineering companies, again, we're near Texas, and one of the things to note is that the United States is a great job creator. Now, sometimes you see in the news that we are, we're, up in jobs or down in jobs, or, we're squeezing or we're expanding. But in general, our country is a great job creator. But a lot of international students really focus in on those famous names, IBM and engineering companies that have famous names. In reality, across the United States, most jobs come from growing companies that are small, and especially the medium-sized companies that are growing and expanding and using those kind of specialized skills and specialized focus that they have, and adding employees as they grow. And so that's what we try to educate our students about, is that the great opportunities for jobs comes with these small and medium-sized engineering companies. What's interesting about those companies is those companies usually don't have a lot of extra layers of administration. They're too busy with the tasks that they're tasked with. And so you have to go out and find those jobs because they don't have a, big advertising or human resource department. And so there is a process in which you have to find those jobs because they're there. The jobs are there. There is just a process of finding those jobs. And then we mentioned here, again, our relationship to Texas. We are less than 1 hour away from Texas, and Texas is a huge state in the United States. It has the second largest U.S. economy, I think, after California, but it's much more stable than California. It is a constantly growing economy. California has some big ups and big downs. All told, California has a bigger economy, but Texas, I think, has more opportunity. Texas's economy is bigger than South Korea's economy, bigger than Australia as a country's economy, and it's one of the highest job creators in the United States. 6 of the biggest cities in the United States are in Texas: Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, Fort Worth, and El Paso are 6 huge cities. Each one has its own particular flavor, if we could use that word. Houston is a big medical technology city. It's an oil city. It's a port city, and it has lots of jobs in all areas. San Antonio is culturally, it has a lot of military-related things. There's very large bases there. It has lots of great connections with Mexico. Dallas, of course, is kind of a large city that's growing in financial areas and just, many areas. Those are all just huge cities. Austin is the capital of Texas, and it's a high-tech city. It has lots of things that our students go to join companies in biomedical engineering, nanoengineering, nanotechnology. Some of those companies are located in Dallas. Dell Computers, their headquarters is in Austin. And so each of these, cities has multiple companies, but they have their own flavor. Dallas, we just turn around and highlight Dallas a little bit here. Dallas has got $504 billion GDP. It's 10th largest economy in the world. Is United States. Houston, $489 billion economy. Dallas is 3.5, 4 hours from us on the main highway. Houston is 5 hours from us. That may seem 5 hours may seem to you a little bit farther away, but in reality, in the United States, we're spread out, and 5 hours is just a quick trip for us. And a lot of our graduates go to those cities and look for opportunities there. We're going to use an example here from one of our research centers, and I'm going to go ahead just one slide and show you some of the research centers on campus. We have a Center for Applied Physics Studies. These are research centers. We had a lot of those students, PhD students in that program, went to Switzerland to work with the CERN particle accelerator. And a few years back, I think 4 of the 5 PhDs who were there from us participated in that Nobel Prize winning research that was used to prove that, I think they called it the God particle. And that was used, that was in, I know, different Indian newspapers at that time a few years ago. Our biomedical engineering center, biomedical science, things like stem cell research and other things continue to expand here. Center for Entrepreneurship and Information Technology is a joint research center between our business college and our engineering college, especially our computer science department. Center for Secure Cyberspace is, again, back to that cyber engineering and cybersecurity area, very cutting edge. Some of the companies that work and do research with us are, high security companies. So sometimes international students say, well, this would have a high security clearance, so international students can't be involved. And that's not necessarily true. There would be, areas that international students could not maybe participate in. But generally speaking, if a company wants the best, it's going to want the best minds wherever they come from. And there are things that, our students, jobs that our students get, and the big need that our students fill, and it may not require that degree of cyber or that degree of security clearance. And then later on, if you do end up staying, if you do end up going on toward a permanent residency, there are degrees of, security clearance that you can also achieve and be more involved in depending on your security clearance. We do have a STEM Education Research Center that's in our College of Education. We are an education center in North Louisiana, South Arkansas, and we are working with secondary schools, primary schools to kind of continue to upgrade the science education, the math education, not only here at our university, but all around us in the different counties, the different parishes in Louisiana and Arkansas. We have Institute for Micromanufacturing, and that's our nanotechnology center. Our Nano Engineering Center partners with our Biomedical Engineering Center for large grants and large research grants. Finally, our Trenchless Technology Center. I'm going to go back and talk about that and just talk about how someone could leverage their relationship in their degree and their relationships with professors to get involved with companies, get involved with internships. Our Trenchless Technology Center is part of our Civil Engineering Department, and this is our Trenchless Technology Center, just to use as an example, is renowned all over the world. And what it means is that large cities, instead of digging up the whole city, there's a way of creating substructure engineering in a way that reclaims kind of broken materials and other things and kind of reclaims it without, again, having to dig things up. And we work especially with companies all over China, all over Asia, large cities that don't want to, that have an infrastructure problem they're trying to solve, especially oil pipes, water pipes, fiber optic cable that needs to be laid. We have materials and other things that we've invented, for these substructure engineers. And the training that we provide brings employers to campus from all over the world, especially from more than 100 U.S. companies. They either come to our campus or they attend the conferences that we put on in several cities. Well, am I just bragging, or is there something to do with students? Well, of course, the students participate in these conferences. They help their professors and the department put those conferences on, and they meet those employers as they come, those companies as they come to learn the latest technology for these oil companies, these water companies all over the United States, all over the world. And those employers come, those companies come to learn that technology, but also to add to their staff people who can use those technologies. And so those conferences have been very key in bringing students together with companies and employers. Training brings employers to campus to find future employees, and we've had PhD students who are doing research in these areas, and several of them have just rolled over and worked with especially the Chinese university partners, and become professors there. A professor in the University of Hong Kong, one at Wuhan, one in Chengdu. And so these PhD students come out of our program and roll over and continue to do that research as professors in these, our partners overseas. Professors at the center, and this is maybe a unique idea to you, a new idea to you, that professors at these research centers have the ability to actually start companies. And so we have professors at this particular center who've started 3 new companies, the professors have, looking at how they can, you know, move outside of some of just the research they're doing to actually create products that they can market. And so they've partnered, and most times they've partnered with their graduate students that are graduating, and actually have done it really for those graduating students that then leave and become, you know, really partners with them as they start these companies up. Now we highlight the Trenchless Technology program, but that happens, you know, really all over our campus at the different research centers. Again, getting an internship, the question is being prepared. We talked about department connections through your advisor. We're a good size to have, you know, good relationships with between students and faculty. We do have career center. We do have a nice career center, career days. But the warning is always about career centers and career days is that there's only a fraction of the companies, you know, when you think about the hundreds of thousands of companies, potential employers don't get kind of wrapped up in the 100 or 200 companies that come for a career day. Think outside the box. Think, you know, outside of the 200 companies that come to your campus for a career day. We've covered a little bit about this, STEM OPT, science, technology, engineering, and math. Again, these 2 extra years, which were added just a couple years ago, was designed to take the pressure off of the H1B lottery system and allows that employer to continue to, you know, employ you. After 3 years of employment, he probably can't do without you. And again, that whole time you continue to be on a student visa. During this whole time, you continue to be connected with our office, the international office at the university. You know, if you travel, if you change your address, if you change employers, and it is clear, you know, unfortunately, it's clear that there is a bias toward STEM degrees in the United States, science, technology, engineering, and math, over and above business degrees, where you just get 1 year and there's no way to renew that on your student visa. Okay, moving forward to the H1B visa, you must have at least a bachelor's degree, and the job must require a bachelor's degree. An example is nursing. That's a problem. Nursing degree. Now, many schools require a bachelor's degree to get a registered nursing, become a registered nurse, RN. But the student may have a bachelor's degree. But in fact, many schools graduate those registered nurses in an associate degree program. So the job itself doesn't necessarily require that bachelor's degree. And so even though the student might have a bachelor's degree, the program at your school might require a bachelor's degree to get a nursing degree, where they would actually get a minor in biology or something like that. Actually, that job is disqualified from an H-1B work visa because all nurses are not required to have a bachelor's degree. And there are other degrees like that, you know, sales, for example. Sales, you really be, when you apply for that visa, when the employer applies for the visa for you, he has to prove that, you know, he doesn't hire or never hires anyone for a sales position or something like that, even an industrial sales, engineering sales position that didn't have a, you know, completed degree. Sometimes that's hard to do in things like sales. Okay, capped. There's a limit, 85,000, 200,000 apply more or less. Each year it's a little different. Winners are chosen in April. In other words, your company applies for you April 1st. There's a town in New Hampshire, or I'm sorry, in Vermont, the state next to New Hampshire, up in New England, where these are sent. And we think the FedEx delivery man must be go crazy because he's going to deliver 200,000 packages to the immigration office there on April 1st. The law says that those visas start October 1st, and they say you can apply for those up to 6 months early. And of course, everybody applies on that first day when they become open, and so they do a lottery from those who apply those first several days. And again, there's a slight advantage for students with American master's or doctoral degrees. CAP exempt, as we mentioned earlier, is working at universities and some other nonprofit organizations, but working at a university could include, teaching at a university. It could include research at a university-related company or related entity. It could be working at a university hospital. So there's other, there's things that are, universities are involved in. But those visas are CAP exempt, and they're very attractive because you can apply for those anytime, and there's no limit, there's no cap to those. So how might this affect your strategy? Well, I use an example. Graduating in the fall might be a bad idea, especially if you're a business. If you have a business degree and you graduate in December, then you will have a work card that you can start immediately after graduation, or you can start up to 59 or 60 days after graduation, which would put you in mid-February, and that would go for 1 year. But that bridge, and as a business student you'd only get 1 year of OPT, that bridge would fall April 1st. So finding a job, convincing that employer to help you apply for an H1B, and doing all the paperwork with the lawyer. If you started your card February 1st, you would only have 2 months to do all of that, because by the next cycle, your card will have already ended. Okay, so graduating in the fall might be a bad idea. We have a quarter system here. So we have students who arrive in September. We have students who arrive in December to start winter quarter, and we have students who start in March. So students who graduate even in winter can start their OPT, in late April, so that they can, so that they have a full year before they're required to, their company is required to submit that H1B application. So strategically, you have to think of when you're going to graduate and how much time that gives you before you fall into that lottery. Again, the STEM degree gives you 3 chances to get the H1 if you get going fast enough and take that first chance. Going back to get a master's degree, a higher degree, increases your odds. If you go back to school and you come back out again, then you again get more chances to get an H1B visa. If you go back to get a second master's degree, you don't get any more optional practical training time. To get more optional practical training time, you have to go 1 degree higher. So if you finish a bachelor's degree, you can get optional practical training. You can get, that time after graduation to work. If you come back and you go 1 step up and get a master's, then you can again go out into the job market and work on your optional practical training, your work card. If you come back and get a similar degree, a second master's, then you don't get any more optional practical training time. And again, I think we've covered most of these things. The H1B must meet salary requirements. OPT does not, so there's no salary requirements if you're working on an optional practical training, but H1B, there's a Labor Department process in which they have to pay you a prevailing wage and offer you a prevailing wage. Always more to learn. I just use an example of the cap gap. Cap gap is something that, you know, if your card is going to end in May or June, then you need to go through a process so that you can stay legal and continue working at your company if they award you an H1 until October 1st. So there's always more things to learn about this process. In most cases, the law requires the employer to pay for anything related to the H1B fees. You pay for your own fees when it comes to the OPT process. That's your choice. And I repeat, always take advantage of information and training at the University Career Center. Resume, cover writing, and interviewing skills, letter writing, all those things are very, very important things that they can offer. And number one, if English is not your first language, if you have a strong accent, then work every day to become more fluent and more comfortable with English. That is a, number one thing that separates people when they're being interviewed for internships or positions. Spending all your time with your friends from your own country, you will fail to become fully fluent. And in fact, if you come from some countries that might have what Americans would consider a strong accent, then we even have some accent reduction kind of connections we can put students together with to help them with their accent. And so that's something that our students from South Asia have taken advantage of. Again, we have industrial links with all these kind of companies, majors, and something about us. We're a state university. State universities, the door is wide open, but we require a lot of hard work. Undergraduate requirements are very simple: 2.5 GPA, 71 TOEFL, so not very difficult. And even scholarships are available for our higher TOEFL scores. Outer states fees are waived. Graduate requirements, again, the GRE score is the biggest thing for graduate applicants anywhere in the United States. We have students applying from hundreds of colleges and many countries. And so the great equalizer looking at different applications is that GRE score. At the graduate level, the only way to get the out-of-state tuition waiver, which makes things very reasonable, very, very cheap, is to get that assistantship. Most professors post their CVs, their resumes, and that is a real valuable thing. Research those professors. Find the areas of research. Sometimes they even brag about the amount of money, grant money they have, and that's helpful as you look forward to, people you want to connect with. What do you want to do? You don't generally want a degree. You really want, really some specific and very valuable experience while you're here. So research that professor. And that's not only for our school. Research professors at all the schools you're interested in. Back again to a little bit about us. The ELS Center on our campus. We have an English center on our campus, and among all the ELS centers in the U.S., we're ranked top 3 for friendliest, and we're ranked number 1 for contact with Americans, meaning the ELS center is in the middle of the campus, and they feel like they really connect with Americans around them. And that says something about, I think, the international students' experience at our university in general. Again, we're in a college university town in the South, near Texas, and in fact, people take their time here, and people are able to make contact and make friends here and make significant relationships that will carry them forward. I was at University of Houston before coming here 26 years ago, and it was a commuting school. Everyone by 3 o'clock had left the campus and left the university to go back to whatever part of Houston they were from. But here, people continue to live in a college community and continue to get to know each other better. Very safe environment, and we have lots of recreational facilities and other facilities. It's a big campus, more than 120 buildings, things like that. Tuition fees for a bachelor, $16,000. On the I-20, $27,000. Often the out-of-state tuition is waived, So the in-state tuition becomes about $9,600 per year. Tuition for master's or PhD is about $13,000, and the total, including living expenses, books, insurance, is about $25,000. Again, very reasonable, good quality, reasonable tuition translates to, as I said earlier, all those rankings on return on investment, best value, those kind of things. And I kind of sped it up through the last half of our presentation because I wanted to leave time for questions, and maybe I can turn this back over to our host if she's still out there. And
Yes, Dan. Thank you so much for sharing such valuable information. I'm sure our audience has many questions for you. With that, I open the floor for the question and answer session. Please send me your questions via the chat box functionality you will find on the GoToWebinar control panel. I see we already have received some. So I'm going to read those out to you, Dan. So the first one is, what kind of industries are located in and around Ruston, is one of our students asking. Yes.
Okay, well, we have the highest per capita income of any county in Louisiana. There's petroleum, engineering related companies. There's companies that spin off from the university. So you have university related companies. We have Shreveport, which is about 45 minutes away. So we have all kinds of finance related, business, finance, banking places. We're I think that we do have things around us here, but the big things that we can offer is being close to these very, very large job creating markets, and that'd be true about any university town. The big thing is that there are these large job creators that are within a few hours of us.
Great. So the next question is, after the completion of my studies, do I have to live in Ruston for my OPT?
Not at all. Not at all. Everything is done remotely. Not at all. We have people all over the United States. The OPT, and that's the thing. It doesn't matter what happens around Ruston. We're a very mobile society here, and so again, most of those students on OPT are in, from California to New York. They're all over the United States, and we are still in touch with them through emails, through calls, through other methods. They're still part of us here, but they're all over the United States working.
Great. I have one more question from a student. When is the right time to apply for internship if I join in August?
Well, if you, by law, the CPT is, you can't do a CPT until you've been enrolled for 1 academic year. So that would be 9 months. So from the time you arrive in the United States, you're not able to get CPT for those first 2 semesters or 3 quarters. That means that you're kind of like targeting that first summer after you arrive. And you can do a CPT in any large city or anything like that. You're free to, work with your department or find a CPT that's outside of your town, for those 3 months. But the main thing is that the law prevents you from actually getting a CPT for those first 3 months. And I think that the process for getting the CPT is very easy. You have to your international advisor actually puts it into the immigration website, a letter from your advisor showing that you'll be taking internship credits, and a letter showing that, and it's part of your curriculum, becomes part of your curriculum by you taking internship credits, and then a letter from the employer making that offer. So that part's very simple. You can do that in a very short time, 10 minutes, if you bring the correct letters. Now, different schools have different requirements. You know, some say that internship really has got to come out of very specific criteria within your department, and some universities it's more flexible. So we tend to be more flexible. Of course, we have to follow the law, and when students come the first, again, like I said, the first 2 semesters or 3 quarters into the United States, then you're prevented from doing that by law. Now, if you come back for a new degree, then it really depends on university policy. You've already been in the United States, you know, and now you're coming back for a second degree, and it depends on university policy how early they allow a CPT or internship.
Okay, so we have a student who actually already has a master's degree from the US, but is considering to get a second master's. So the question, I believe you might have answered that, but I'll still ask it if you can provide some more information. So the question is, since he got OPT the first time, is he eligible to get OPT again if he comes for second master's?
He is not. He's not able to get a OPT for the second master's. You have to go up one step to get be eligible for OPT. So that's a problem. Now the person can do CPT during his master's program. That's still open to him. He can do the internship, curricular practical training during the program itself, and employers can, you know, apply for that person. If the person has made connection and has a job offer, the employer can apply directly for an H1B for that student. But there's some issues because, again, you're applying in April and the actual visa comes out in October, and it's hard for that student maybe to continually work for that company until that October date. So there are some hurdles, some problems, but those things, CPT and H1B are still open to the student, but OPT is not.
Great. So the next question is from a student who is inquiring about what are the career opportunities are there for MBA students after they complete their MBA studies?
Okay. MBA is, you know, companies, when they apply for H1B, know that person's going to be with them for a while. But again, H1B continues to be a second bridge, and the company lawyers and other people realize how difficult really it is to move an MBA forward through the process toward a green card. Now, I say that and I say, well, an MBA in accounting is different. MBA perhaps in finance is different. But MBA marketing, MBA management, those are very difficult as you go bridge by bridge, step by step forward in the process, because somewhere along the line the company is going to have to prove that it couldn't find a qualified American for that job. Now, accounting, there's a huge demand for accountants here, and so it's easier to prove that for accounting. Finance, there's some special skills, some special things in banking. Again, you know, what special skills does that person have that other people don't have? But it's more difficult to quantify those special skills and why an American can't take that job for, again, the green card. Once you get up to the green card wall in things like marketing and management or a general MBA.
Okay. The next question we have is from a student who is asking, can a student avail both CPT and OPT?
Sure. The CPT happens during your program, during the program, and the OPT, for the most part, I mean, there are exceptions to this, for the most part, OPT happens after you graduate. Now, CPT, lots of times students try to kind of blend those together, you know, and start, you know, they have a job opportunity at the end of their studies and they try to get an internship their final quarter so they can grab a job before applying for a work card. And most schools, because of immigration looking very suspiciously at that kind of thing, someone grabbing an internship to start a permanent job at the end of their studies, most schools will separate those things, that where you can't take a CPT, an internship, and then roll it right into an OPT, a job. So most schools will find ways to split those away from each other. But you can do both, absolutely.
So one of our students is asking, what is the right time to apply for H1B visa if I'm joining this August? I believe joining the program this August.
Well, someone who's joining a program is on an F1 visa. That person, be a student, will be F1. The H1B visa is related to a job. So you are, most of the time we're talking about someone who's graduated, moved on, taken a job, and then they've been on what's called an OPT, a student OPT card, and then that company applies for them. So a student can come here and start studying, and if they already have a bachelor's degree back in India, and someone finds it very attractive for them to be hired, they can be hired that first April. Not hired, but they can put that application in. But even if it's accepted, that student couldn't take that position until October. So for the most part, it's kind of for just to arrive here and then try to change over to an H1B is kind of foolish. Really, everything's geared to for someone to finish a master's degree, get that work card, which is a bridge. That person continues to work during the time that H1B petition is filed, and then that person, if they do get the H1B, it kind of rolls from student visa over to H1B visa. But to come here and then just to apply is not going to work.
All right, so the next question is, a student has already completed her master's from India and is interested to pursue thesis-based MS from US. So her question is she eligible for OPT and CPT?
Right. I'm trying to read into the question. If she's asking whether she can get the OPT after graduation.
Yes, so what she's saying is that she already holds a master's degree from India and wants to study, another master's from the US.
Right.
So it's not that two masters from the US, one from India and one from US. So is she eligible for OPT and CPT?
Absolutely. I guess the point that I dropped in that discussion is that if you apply for OPT after the first master's and you use up your master's OPT, you can't get master's OPT again. But even if you take a master's in the US and you get a second master's and you didn't apply for OPT after the first one, you can still use the OPT for the second one. You didn't use it during the first one. So just as someone coming from India who has a master's degree there, they've never used up their master's OPT. So of course that's available to them after their master's studies here. So again, you get one time to use OPT, master's OPT. If you didn't use it for your first one, it's available and ready for you to use after your second one.
Okay. So another student is asking regarding the master's program in mechanical engineering at Louisiana Tech, if you could give some information, and is also requesting to reiterate the information that you shared during one of your slides, where you mentioned that there is problem with graduation, if they graduate in fall. So if you could just reiterate that point.
Sure. Yeah, we have a great mechanical engineering program here, and at the undergraduate level, that's the largest group that graduates in mechanical engineers. But we continue to have research at the graduate level in mechanical engineering. A lot of our research areas use a cross-sectional. They have teams of researchers, teams of research assistants that work together on research projects. So even though you're a mechanical engineer, you might be working on micromechanical devices and doing research in that area, or you might be looking at mechanical engineering as it relates to some other combination of research projects. What I was saying about that was, again, the timing from getting an H1 in April 1st. We have a quarter system, so we have a very convenient kind of way to come in and go out. So we have students starting each of the quarters and graduating all quarters. So the thing about graduating in the fall was only related to, how it bridges over to an H1 application time in April. One of the things to note, even though I say you come any quarter, of course, like most schools, the money for assistantships is basically, most of it is divided up and examined in that early spring period for the following fall. So as you apply, be aware that those, January, February, March period of time is very important as you apply for the fall looking for an assistantship. But in fact, there's money that's distributed throughout the year, but those are some key months looking forward to those assistantships.
All right. So with that, actually, we are out of time. So if you have any further questions, please contact ELS India team, or you can also write to me if you have any questions on this webinar at mbasak@els.edu, which you can see on your screen right now. So thank you, Dan, for presenting today, and thank you all for participating in this webinar. I hope you found today's webinar to be informative and that you will join us again for future ELS webinars. Thank you and have a good night.